The BMW 3 Series has always been the defining sports sedan of its category. This 7th generation model's job description requires it to be more luxurious and comfortable than ever before as well. Question is this the ultimate well-rounded 3 Series BMW set out to make? The latest BMW 3 Series has grown in size. It's a fairly substantial 76mm longer than the 6th gen model, though height is up by just 1mm. The wheelbase is longer too. In all, it's every bit the low-slung sedan like 3s before, though there's enough to tell you this is the latest in the family. Like all new BMWs, the grille is the focal point up front. It's the largest on the 3 Series yet, but doesn't look oversized or awkward. At least to my eyes. A detail BMW fans will note is that the kidney grille is now framed by a single chrome surround. The grille also serves as the car's breathing apparatus with louvers that open only when the engine needs cooling air. Also cool are the shapely full LED headlights and the T-shaped elements lower down. However, the bumper on this luxury line car is perhaps a bit too subtle for a 3 Series. The car's rear too is neat and tidy, but also a bit anonymous. Dual exhausts are standard, but perhaps you should consider the M Sport trim if visual drama is what you want. Like all 3 Series before, the new one too seats you low down and the driving position is really sporty. You also get a great view out, and what helps is that the dash cowl is nice and low. There's obviously a lot of new age BMW to the look of things inside, and there are quite a lot of nice touches as well. I really like the knurled controls here and even for the iDrive controller. But at the same time, there are certain bits that aren't quite up there with the pricier BMWs. The gear lever, for instance, doesn't look all that special, and I also find the plastics in the region of the iDrive controller and the power window switches a bit ordinary. There are other quirks as well in the cabin. The biggest point of contention is the layout of the all-digital instrument cluster. Sure, the screen is high-res and gives prime real estate to the map, but the angular speedometer and counterclockwise tachometer at the other side are just not easy enough to read on the go. BMW traditionalists will sure miss the classic analog dials. You will like the iDrive system that's easy to use. Our car didn't have gesture control, but the touchscreen is slick, the customizable home screen gives ready access to frequently used functions, and you can even scribble in instructions on the touchpad atop the iDrive controller. Though right-handed drivers will need to be ambidextrous to get it right. There's also BMW's latest voice-activated personal assistant. Saying "Hey BMW" will get the system's attention, and it can be used to control a fair few functions such as the climate control system. Okay BMW.
Hello, what can I help you with?
I'm feeling hot.
Oh, I am lowering the temperature, so it will be more comfortable shortly.
However, it does get tripped on Indian names and accents every now and then. Talking features, the 3 Series does get plenty as standard, but there are differences between the trims. Switching focus to the rear seat. So the 3 Series rear seat, as always, sits very low, so getting in and out isn't the easiest of exercises. But once you're inside, you like the experience in the back. The seat for once is really nice. There's a good amount of thigh support, the backrest recline is really nice, and the padding is also of a very good standard. Also, what's noticeable is that there is more legroom than before, and headroom has also increased, though taller passengers will still find a bit of an issue here. Of the other things, the 3 Series for India handily comes with a space-saver spare tire that's neatly concealed under the boot floor. On the flip side, the boot is relatively shallow, so the 3 Series might not be the pick of your cars for airport drops. Over to the driving experience. The 3 Series has been launched in India in 330i petrol and 320d diesel forms, and it's the latter we have with us today. The 320D's 2-litre diesel engine and its 190 HP and 400 Nm figures might sound all too familiar, but it's actually not the same unit that powered the last 3 series. Twin sequential turbos replace the single twin-scroll turbo, and you can feel the difference from behind the wheel. The engine is slightly different in character. You get readier access to power at low speeds, and it does make it friendlier to live with. But when you press down harder on the throttle, you'll be quite surprised by the amount of poke this relatively humble 2-litre diesel engine delivers. The improved performance reflects in flat-out acceleration times as well. According to BMW's official figures, the new 320D betters the last-gen model's 0 to 100 kph time by 4/10 with a time of 6.8 seconds. Sure, the timings are for launch control-equipped versions, but either way, it's an amazing figure for a diesel luxury sedan. And it's not only faster, but quieter too. An area where the 3 Series has improved is refinement. You hear less of the world outside, and particularly less from the engine bay. In fact, up to about 2,500 RPM or so, it's nice and quiet, and that's something anyone familiar with the older version of BMW's 2-litre diesel engine will note. The last 2,500 RPM, that's 2,500 to 5,000 RPM, the engine does get noisier, but where the old one sounded buzzy, this one sounds busy, and that's a small but pretty crucial difference. What also adds to comfort is the improved ride. The suspension's all-new damping system offers greater control of the spring, and passengers do reap the benefits. At low speeds, there's still a little bit of a hint of that typical European firmness, but the suspension does seem to be rounding off the bumps better. Generation to generation, what has improved is high-speed manners. Now, the damping for one is particularly better, so when you're going at triple-digit speeds as you would on the highway, the small ups and downs of the surfaces don't make their way to the cabin as they used to. In effect, what you get is a more relaxing long-distance car. Drivers will also like the steering setup. It's weighty and confidence-inspiring at high speed, yet light and easy at average down speeds. Ease of use is one thing, but if there's one area where a 3 Series needs to deliver, it's handling. The ingredients are there. The move to BMW's cluster architecture has made the car lighter by up to 55 kgs, it's 25% stiffer, and as ever, weight distribution is 50-50 front to rear. The news is largely good. Even at its sportiest setting, the latest 3 Series doesn't feel quite as tight and agile as the last one did. Then again, there's a caveat here. This one is running on relatively small 17-inch rims with a lot of rubber around them. Larger rims and lower profile tires would make a world of a difference to the handling. What you can't doubt, however, is the sheer level of grip. You can really push the car hard into corners without reaching its limits. So there you have it. The 320D might not be the ultimate driving machine, but it's still fast and fun, and what BMW has successfully done is broaden the car's appeal by improving on refinement, ride, and overall comfort that are all things that matter in India. In all, you get a more rounded and wholesome package, and I don't see too many people having a problem with that.
Not too long ago, most SUVs sold in India were powered by diesel engines. Now though, the trend is changing. Take this, the MG Hector as an example, whose petrol variants comprise of nearly 50% of its total sales. And a good chunk of those numbers are formed by the automatic variants. We've driven the diesel manual and the petrol hybrid manual version at the media drive, and ever since then, we received a ton of requests for the petrol automatic version. We finally managed to get our hands on one. Is this the version to buy? Stick around to find out. The focus of this video will be the petrol engine and the automatic transmission. What you should know is that this is a non-hybrid version of the 1.5-litre turbo petrol engine, and this automatic is a 6-speed dual clutch transmission. Refinement levels are very nice and engine sound is really low, so while cruising or while idling, you can barely hear the engine. What's also nice is that ambient noises are kept outside, which adds to the whole premium experience of this cabin. You can hear this motor when it is spun beyond 5000 rpm. Still, it doesn't lose its refined character. This 1.5-litre turbo petrol engine delivers its power in a very linear manner. Between 1800 and 4000 rpm is this engine's sweet spot. Stay in it and it'll do its job just fine. Now this is not the slickest or the quickest shifting units out there. It is a lazy unit and it does its job in a nice and relaxed manner. So it'll upshift to a higher gear as soon as possible, but when it comes to downshifts, it is not the one which will downshift at the slightest flex of your right foot. In fact, you need to put your foot flat for it to downshift and build speed. Under most scenarios, the gearbox shifts seamlessly. It's just that sometimes when you're slowing down in traffic or when you get off and on the throttle, it can get a bit confused, and because of that, it can feel a bit jerky. Outright acceleration isn't all that impressive, and the timings are amongst the slowest in its class. One important thing to note is that when you're cruising at 100 km per hour, the engine is spinning at 2300 rpm in 6th gear and 2600 rpm in the 5th gear. Now what that means is, even when you're driving in a relaxed manner, you're cruising on the highway, the engine is working a lot harder for you, and that will translate into higher fuel consumption. Here's a look at the petrol automatic's fuel economy. Among other changes, this petrol automatic also gets this auto hold function. Now what this does is, you can lift your leg off the brake and remain in drive gear and the car will still not move. So it's a very convenient feature at a traffic light. The good news is that the progress after pressing the throttle is really smooth, so it doesn't leap forward like in some other cars, and that's really nice. And when it comes to ride quality, the MG feels very comfortable and its suspension cushions you from road shocks from the worst of road surfaces. In terms of handling, now there's no feel or feedback from the steering, body roll is high, and because of the narrow tires, it understeers quite a bit when pushed harder. So this isn't a car that will please driving enthusiasts. But what nearly everyone will appreciate is its light steering, which makes driving and parking this large SUV a breeze, and so do all the parking aids on offer. MG has made this DCT available only in the top 2 variants, so it comes fully loaded with kit like a panoramic sunroof, the massive touchscreen with SIM-based connectivity features, a 360-degree camera, diamond cut wheels, and a lot more. So then, should you buy the MG Hector petrol automatic? Now let's address the first half of the question. MG has covered the basics rather well with the Hector. It has solid road presence. The interiors have the wow effect. It's loaded with features. The cabin is spacious and practical. And when it comes to value for money, this car ranks high up there. Now MG is expanding its dealer network by the day, and with solid service and warranty packages, the Hector is a really compelling buy. And now coming to the second part of the question, should you buy the petrol automatic? Now the petrol is smooth and refined, and the automatic is just about okay. It's convenient, but it's a bit slow to respond. And then fuel economy isn't going to be too great for this large SUV. So if it's the Hector you're looking at, the diesel probably makes the more sense because it's a more rounded performer. Unfortunately, it doesn't come with an automatic option just yet.
Big city motorcyclists are an enthusiastic bunch of people. We have no problem getting on our bikes well before the sun rises, and we don't really care about what kind of roads or weather we encounter along the way. So why are we so happy to put ourselves through all of this? Well, to put it simply, it's in the quest of getting to a great riding road and having a fabulous time with our motorcycles in the process.
And good riding roads was all I could think about when I first rode the Gixxer SF 250 at the BIC a couple of months ago. Now don't get me wrong, riding at an F1 circuit is all kinds of awesome, but it didn't reveal very much about the motorcycle, and all we found out was that this is a good handler, but it's more of a sport bike for the road rather than a race bike for the track. And that's what prompted the idea for today's story. We've decided to take this motorcycle on a long ride in search of some fantastic riding roads, and we're going to discover everything the bike has to offer along the way.
With a near 300km round trip ahead of us and the challenge of putting together the shoot in these difficult conditions, we left well before sunrise. Armed with a backpack full of essentials for the day, the Gixxer and I hit the road in the darkness with a powerful LED headlamp lighting the way through. Soon enough, we managed to escape the clutches of the city, by which time it became clear that the Gixxer's riding position is sporty, but it stops short of being punishing. Now as the roads grew wider, the rain started to come down hard, and that's when the Gixxer's lack of any significant wind protection became clear. That tiny windscreen does work to a small extent, but beyond that, it's mostly just a design feature. And speaking of appearances, that's one area where this bike does quite well.
If there's one standout feature with the Gixxer SF 250, it's got to be the design. This bike looks sharp and aggressive, and it's also a much more proportionate and cohesive design than the old Gixxer SF.
The SF250's looks have grown on me now that I've spent more time with it. When you consider the riding position, it's tempting to think of this bike as a sports tourer, but with that aggressive split seat setup, the design is actually pure sports bike. The rider's seat is decently comfy, but once again, the upward curve towards the rear is more in line with a sporty machine, and that tall pillion seat is best saved for shorter journeys. One visual aspect that does jar a little bit is the shape of the exhaust and that chrome treatment, which feels out of place on an otherwise matte black machine. Features wise, Suzuki's one-touch easy start system has turned out to be quite nice on the road, but I'd rather have a side stand down warning and an engine cutoff instead. Nevertheless, what does deserve highlighting is that the quality levels seem quite high and are probably the best you will find at this price point. Of course, the big thing we want to learn more about here is Suzuki's brand new 249cc engine. This is a modern drivetrain with a 4-valve head and a 6-speed gearbox, but Suzuki chose to go with an oil cooling setup instead of liquid cooling. Now the company claims packaging and weight benefits, but cost is probably the bigger advantage gained. Power figures are in the middle of the segment, higher than the Yamaha FZ25, on par with the aged Honda CBR 250R, but lower than the KTM 250 Duke. Of course, specifications only tell half the story, and there's more to this motor that you should know about.
Now that we spent some quality time with the Gixxer SF 250, we've discovered another aspect that the BIC kept hidden away from us. And that's the fact that this brand new engine has a punchy mid-range that makes the bike quite enjoyable in the real world.
Anything upwards of 3000 RPM arrives strong, and that makes the daily commute in the city quite entertaining. Roll-on acceleration on the highway is potent as well, and we found that the big Gixxer is happy to cruise at 100 to 110 km per hour. It'll hit 130 kph without much stress, and you'll eventually get to a top speed of about 150 km per hour. We tested the 250 in wet conditions and managed a 0 to 100 time in the low 9-second mark, which is fairly impressive. Fuel efficiency on the other hand is just about okay, and the Suzuki won't win any awards here. Eventually, we turned off the highway and onto an interior road winding through the lush greenery that is Maharashtra in the monsoon. On an incessantly wet day like this one, the Gixxer was happy to smoothly hold a gentle pace, but the occasional visit to the higher limits of the rev range revealed that the engine does get a little harsh near the red line. On this narrow road, the chassis and suspension setup reflect what the Gixxer SF's riding position has you expect, and as we experienced at the BIC, this is a very good handler, but it's not your typical KTM style razor sharp machine.
The steering action is decently quick and the bike has a reassuringly stable feel while leaned over, with the MRF radials proving to be very competent even in these conditions. Essentially, the handling is fun, capable and encouraging, but never to the point of feeling too focused. As for comfort, the rear suspension is a little firm over bigger bumps, but otherwise, ride quality is at very acceptable levels for a bike that looks like this. I also really like the reassuring braking performance with good feel from the lever and the dual channel ABS system keeping everything neat and controlled. Overall, the Gixxer SF250 does everything you ask of it well, but it also takes a rather straightforward approach to what's on offer. The instrument cluster isn't the most informative, and you won't find any flashy features like a slipper clutch, a USD fork or Bluetooth connectivity. At this point, when you consider the Rs 1.7 lakh price tag, value isn't the first word that jumps to mind. At the end of it all, the Gixxer SF250 stands out for its design, but the rest of the package is more focused on the all-round experience rather than one or two sensational attributes. And to those of you who need their bikes to be the fastest and most advanced things out there, it is understandable if this comes across as disappointing. On the other hand, it's now been 12 hours that I've been riding this bike and I still have another 3 before I'm going to get home. Now in my experience, it's difficult situations like this that highlight the nasty aspects of a motorcycle. But if you were to ask me what I don't like about the Gixxer, I'd struggle to give you an answer. It does everything really quite well. It handles the city well, it's good out on the highway, it's fun in the corners, it doesn't mind going slowly, but it can also go quite fast. What you're looking at here basically is a bike that doesn't jump out at you for any one aspect on the spec sheet, but instead it offers a well executed overall package that makes it quite a tempting proposition. And with that, it's time to get rid of this umbrella and go get my helmet.
And now it's time for fuel efficiency tips with Servo Futura G+. Underinflated tires increase fuel consumption. Fill them as recommended. A car in good health will consume less fuel compared to a badly maintained one.